Ken, maybe not such a busy summer from a transaction standpoint for the Edmonton Oilers, but also a busy summer off the ice in the front office. Jeff Jackson arrives as CEO and president of hockey ops, or that's you. You're president of hockey ops. What's it been like working with Jeff?
I've really enjoyed it. He's obviously, I've dealt with Jeff quite a bit,
Right.
having Connor McDavid when he was in the agent and Evan Bouchard. So we've talked a lot over the last 4 years. Really enjoyed now that Jeff's on board and we're working on the same team. One of the things that he's bringing obviously is the perspective of dealing with, maybe not 31 teams, but a lot of the other NHL teams and the general managers, because he's got players throughout the league. So, he's bringing some other perspectives. And he played in the National Hockey League. He was an assistant general manager with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's had a successful agency for almost, I think, a decade or more. So, very good hockey man, and I've really enjoyed my time with him and look forward to the upcoming season.
How does the perspective from some other organizations, how they operate, how does that help you?
Well, I think, as we've kind of gone over here the summer, as we've talked about some things, and obviously he just kind of come in, the big time during the season to make changes is, through the draft, if you're going to make trades. And then early in July when you've got free agency. Now, Jeff joined us later on, but certainly, one of the things I think, injuries, he's obviously, had clients that have been injured and teams dealing with the injuries and going to second opinions. And I know he's had some people that have worked obviously with Connor. So, as we've come into training camp now and you start to get some of these nagging injuries, he's got some really good information and some different perspective and, on how, because he's hearing it from, he's heard it for the last decade from the player's perspective. If they have, hip flexors, groin injuries, this, that, he'll be talking to the players. So he's got that perspective, which I haven't, I've always been on the club side. So I think as we go forward, that's one example, but as we've come into training camp and had talks about players and what we're going to do with the team, I'd like to think I'm bringing some experience and he's bringing obviously experience, but also another perspective.
Interesting to add another layer to that. Ken, I thought you had one of the quotes of the offseason when you said, "I don't invest in green bananas." I love that because I thought it was a really simple way to explain really kind of the thought process of where this team has evolved to, and also to highlight how different, you're 4 years in here, how different of a spot this team is in. How does that change how you approach this season? From where you were trying to get this back on the right track to now being in it's go time.
Yeah, I think in my opening press conference, I talked about, I was signing a 5-year contract and the previous couple of seasons, I think they were 29th or 30th in the league in over the overall standings. And I felt that it's always important to play big games, and there's different senses of big games. Obviously, the biggest game would be, you're in the Stanley Cup Finals, and it's Game 7, and, the winner takes all, and I've been involved, obviously, one game in 2009 in Pittsburgh in that. But I thought it was important that, in year one, we were playing big games in March, which meant that we were in the playoff hunt, and you got to win some games to make the playoffs. And we were sort of, in year two, and you want to kind of grow and build from that. And in year one, we really were in that position, and then the pandemic hit. Year two, we qualified for the, and I thought that the first year we played in that bubble playoff against the Chicago Blackhawks. They came in with a veteran group of players that had won before, Tays, Duncan Keith, Kane, and some other players, and I thought that we kind of played regular season hockey. It's the growing experience of being in those games over and over and over again. And then year two, we qualified for the playoffs in the Canadian division, and I thought we played playoff hockey. We had 3 overtime games with Winnipeg. We got swept, but one game was 0-0 going to overtime. One game was 1-1 going to overtime. And then year 3, obviously, we went to the Final Four, and we got beat by a team that had kind of built and grown into that. Colorado had been through that 2-3 times, and they beat us and went on to win the Stanley Cup. And then, every year we've kind of got more points, I think, than the year before. So I think as part of an organization, you got to put yourself in those positions over and over and over again. Obviously, the ultimate goal for all 32 teams, and certainly our team, is ultimately to one day win the Stanley Cup. My experiences in Detroit, where you've got to be banging on the door every year. You've got to, when the regular season's over, you got to be part of the tournament. You got to feel good about what you've accomplished during the regular season, and obviously the more experiences that you've got on the players that had playoff experience is a positive, and I think that's what we've tried to build here over the last 4 years. And obviously now we're coming into, when you look at the age of our players, we're in the primes of their careers. We've come off, like I said, we've kind of grown each year. We've lost to the last 2 Stanley Cup champions, Vegas and Colorado, after they've gone on to beat other teams to win the Stanley Cup. So, our players have had a firsthand look at what a Stanley Cup champion team looks like the last 2 years. Now, Frank, we start all over again, and there's 32 teams starting out here on October the 12th or 13th when the season starts.
And nothing's guaranteed.
And you've got to do it all over again.
Mm-hmm. But that said, I just meant in terms of managing and shaping this roster. You see the Ekholm trade last year. It's a totally different spot than you guys were in when you first took over.
Yeah.
What is the next iteration of that? And I guess maybe the easiest way to ask the question is, you've got a bunch of young guys that as part of that process you've helped develop. The Holloways, the Desharnays, all these other guys, Broberg, that are now being asked to do some things. How much easier could they make your life when it comes to rounding out this team in the spring at the trade deadline, if those guys are able to step in and fill some of those last remaining voids that you have?
Well, that's that's obviously an important piece of the process. Is having some younger people, grow into being important pieces or pieces of your team. Why? Well, number one, they're young, and the hope is that they're going to get better. And number two is they're cheap. Because everybody can't make $6 and $7 and $8 million. You've got to have, a good portion of your roster is going to probably be making under $1.25 million. That's just
it's a fact of life.
Yeah, well, especially I got here in 2019, the cap was 81.5. I've been through 5 off seasons. The cap's 83.5. So it's gone up $2 million in 5 off seasons. So, you can't, in that time, we've talked about Ekholm. Obviously, he's makes $6 million, and we've signed Evander Kane and
Hyman.
We brought in Hyman. So, but you can't just keep bringing in $5 and $6 million players. So certainly the growth of Bouchard, the growth of Skinner, the growth of McLeod, the growth of Yamamoto, who had 20 goals and 40 points a year ago. But ultimately, when the cap barely moves, and this year moved $1 million, we had to make some hard decisions and, really align. Bukestad at the deadline, Costin and Yamamoto, they're all in other cities because we had to make hard decisions on the salary cap. So certainly now, as we've come in, the Brobergs, the Holloways, Lavoie, we've, and then we've signed some players that Peterson that had he's been around pro hockey, giving Adam Ernie a tryout, giving Brandon Sutter a tryout. These are all important pieces in the overall scheme of things. Obviously, everybody looks at the players that really drive your team, the superstars. But if you want to have a good, successful regular season, you want to qualify, and you want to then make the playoffs, you need depth, and you need players, younger players from your minor league team coming in and pitching in during the season to have a good year.
I'm glad you mentioned Lavoie, because I think he's such an interesting test case of how you shape this year. You've got a prospect who's a second round pick that has a big moment in front of him at this camp. He's not waiver exempt. You're going to have to make a decision, but you've also got experienced guys on PTOs that could probably fill a similar role. How do you manage that?
Well, that's what we're going to go through preseason now. The games are getting, we've played a couple of preseason games. We got 6 preseason games to go. Now the rosters are going to get better. I thought the first couple of games, we played back to back with Winnipeg. Both teams used, lots of, younger players. The lineups are going to get stronger. And we've got here 6 games and around 2 weeks, 12, 13 days to make those decisions. Obviously, we're going to factor in some of the things that these players have done in the past. That has to be part of the process. And I'll sit down with Jay Woodcroft, and he'll be talking to his staff on an everyday basis. And Jeff Jackson and Keith Gretzky, who knows, he's seen Lavoie play lots in the American Hockey League. And then you ultimately go through the evaluation process, and then we do our talking and kind of look at our team and then they're going to be difficult decisions. All 32 teams are going to have difficult decisions as to who's on their final roster. Obviously, with the cap not moving, if you carry a 23-man roster, you probably can, make that extra spot or two can factor into how you think.
And you're not going to be able to use
that. But we're probably going to have a 21-man roster, so we're going to have to, it makes it for a little more difficult decisions with a 22 or 23-man roster. You can maybe carry a younger player for a period of time to give them some opportunity to see what happens.
And not force the decision.
We're in a little bit of a different situation, but I knew that was, certainly when we let some people go, it was important to get Evan Bouchard signed. It was important to get McLeod signed, and we kept the players that we felt were the most important, and then we let some people go, and not that we didn't want them. The salary cap forced us into making decisions.
So philosophically, and not to put too fine a point on the Lavoie decision, but if you have a younger guy that's a second-round pick that you think might be able to be something, but you're also – this year is not about – the development time's over for the Edmonton Oilers at the NHL level. That's not what that's about anymore. It's about winning and chasing a Stanley Cup. How do you –
Well, fortunately, I was through that I was a general manager of the Detroit Red Wings from 97 to 2019, 22 years, and I don't know, we probably were the last 3 years were a rebuild, but 17, 18 years we were sort of in this, the time is now mode. So obviously I've got lots of experience in making those decisions. So, in Rafi's case, obviously he's a second round pick. We liked him in his draft year. He's 6'4". He had a big playoff, and his first year was the pandemic. I think he spent a good chunk of that year over in Europe playing in the Allsvenskan, scored some goals, and then last year, not this past year, but the year before, he had a bit of it's the first year in the American League, really. He had some injuries. And then last year, again, he was hurt, came back, got off to a slow start. And then from around early December to the end of the year, scored 25 goals in about, 50 games. So I know he's trained really hard this summer. He got injured at the end of the year. Obviously, it's an important training camp for him. It's an important training camp for us to make a decision. Obviously, when you put a player on waivers, anytime they become waiver eligible, if you don't protect them and keep them on the team, you're exposing them, and you could possibly lose them. So, this is a big 10 days here. The 6 games. He's played 1 game. I'm assuming he'll play another probably 4 out of the next 6, and then we gotta make some tough decisions.
From the outside looking in, if there's one question mark about the Edmonton Oilers that some have, it might be goaltending. Tough year, no secret. No one's hiding it for Jack Campbell last year. Stuart Skinner stepped in and really had a great year, and is going to be a key part of this team moving forward. But where is Jack Campbell? And for you, what is the ideal split in terms of how you make this year go?
Well, first off, we got a goalie that was a finalist for the Calder Trophy. So there hasn't been a lot of goalies that get voted in. So that tells you the type of year that Stu Skinner had. He had 29 wins. he played, I think, 28 of our last 32 games. So, we believe that we've got a really good young goaltender. I think Stu's 23, maybe 24. I mean, he's going to be an NHL goalie here for, probably a decade or, so, and there's lots of upside and he's got lots of experience. So right off the bat, we're coming knowing and he's a workhorse. He, like I said, he played 28 of our last 32. Obviously we signed Jack Campbell last year, but the number one goalie. And I thought Jack had a inconsistencies. I think in February, I think there was a time he won 9 in a row. So, he was a piece of help, a part of helping us qualify for the playoffs. Down the stretch, we started to go to Stu on an every night basis. Jack only come in relief. When he came in relief, he played very, very good. I know that Jack did some things this offseason, changed his training.
He looks leaner.
Yeah, he's a little thinner. I think he's got, he's kind of focused in or got a different a mental coach that he's dealing with. I know he's excited. Last year was probably his worst year statistically in his career in the National Hockey League. And I'd also say that the NHL, the saves percentages, there was more goals last year than in the past. So everybody's statistics have kind of gone down. Most of the goalie statistics, their saves percentage, their goals against have gone up and the saves percentages have gone down. So, it's first year of a 5-year contract, come in with a lot of pressure. Part of the reason we signed him is he'd been in Toronto. It's a pressure situation, a big market. And he's been here for a year now. He knows the expectations. He knows the team. He's got a great relationship with Stu Skinner. Obviously, we need both goalies to play good. It's a 2-goalie league. Even if one goalie plays 55 to 60 games, the other guy still got to play 20 to 25. But I think coming in, we're probably looking at the split of 45-35. Does one guy play 50 and the other guy play 30? I don't know that you want to play your one guy much more than 50 games. The way how difficult the league is, and with especially here in Edmonton, the travel is. When I was in Detroit, the travel here is way harder. So it's a 2-goalie. You're on the road more, and you're going and you're coming. You're going and you're coming. There's not many 1-hour flights to play games other than maybe Vancouver and Calgary, where when you're right in the middle of the league, there's lots of 1-hour flights. So it's a 2-goalie. You got to have 2 goalies. We're going to need them both. Is
it a pure meritocracy?
Or
does contract weigh in?
Contract does not weigh in. Winning weighs in. I would say that probably as we come here, Stu Skinner, the way he finished, being our guy down the stretch and in the playoffs, is probably coming in with, someone who's going to play opening night. That's all might be a big thing in some fans' minds. The reality is we play 82 games. Like I said, I think it's probably 45-35. On the long end, it's 50-30. But whoever's playing the best we're gonna push them out there and they're gonna play. We're in it to try to. We got to win games. Obviously, our expectations, our goals are we want to be a playoff team. Somebody gets hot, someone's playing better than the other guy. We're gonna ride them. But ultimately, we're gonna need both guys to be contributing over 82 games.
Is there something to be said for trying to also give Jack Campbell a chance to? I don't want to say build his confidence, but that this year, hey, what happened last year is and that also goes for Stu Skinner. He needs to go out and prove that what he did last year he can replicate again. Is there something to be said for making sure that Jack has a path to get back to the level he was at previously?
Well, I think that goes on every day. I mean, obviously we're at practice. It's video. There's a goalie coach, Dustin Schwartz. But Jack's 30, Stu's 24, like they're pros. That's a part of, it's, all 32 teams are in different stages of where, not all 32 NHL teams are in the same stage. Obviously, where we are right now, when you look at our team, we're trying to compete to be, a legitimate, make the playoffs, be regarded as a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. and over the course of the year grow our team. We talked about some of the young kids and get to the trade deadline, and you want to play your way into be a buyer. It means that you like your team and you're trying to add a player. That's what we've done here. You don't want to be a seller. So I think given where we're at, we're going into game one in Vancouver. We're going to put the goalie in there that we think is going to give us the best chance that night to try to win a game. And then 3 nights later, Vancouver comes here, so maybe early on you can kind of go with one guy a little bit more. But ultimately, as the year starts to wear on and you get 10 games in and 15 and 20 and 25 and 30, you can't just keep pushing out the same goalie night after night after night after night. So basically it's we're going to do everything we can to support them, to give them every opportunity for success. But it's probably no different than the players. They know the younger players. We're trying to win, and every night we're not just putting players out so that they get experience and hope that it's going to have some positive impact 2, 3, 4 years down the road. This is an important season. We're trying to, in 23, 24, we're trying to legitimately contend and compete with the best teams in the National Hockey League, and it starts from zero, from scratch, for everybody on opening night, and now you gotta do that all over again. So I guess I'm basically saying it's not like these goalies are 19 and 20, and Jack's 30, the other guy's 23, going to be 24 this year or just turned 24. Stu Skinner spent time in the American Hockey League. All that work has been done in the past. They're pros now. They understand the expectations, the challenges, the responsibilities. And I think they understood that on May the 17th or May the 19th, after we lost out to Vegas and our year was over. They've kind of gone through all that over the course of the summer. It's an ongoing process.
You've spent a career around greatness, Hall of Fame players in Detroit, some of the very best at their positions. I'd be remiss not to ask about Connor and Leon, because you had relayed a story, whenever you're around the room sometimes as they're walking by or whatever. It's not disrespect at all, but sometimes you can barely get a grumble out of them, a hello, and they're on to the next thing. And I thought, to me, that spoke, Ken, to the laser focus that Connor and Leon have to be great. How much does that rub off on everyone else?
Well, it's massive. I mean, people talk about culture. Culture, in my opinion, is your best players' commitment, determination, passion. And when I was in Detroit and got the opportunity to come here to Edmonton to be the general manager, certainly I knew they were the incredibly talented players. You just have to look at the guide record book and the stats tell you. But, getting to watch them on an everyday basis, getting to watch them and know what they do in the off season, the sacrifices they make, the determination that they have, the passion that they have to be the best that they can be on an everyday basis. When I first came here the first year, Bob Nicholson didn't even tell me that Connor had kind of had an injury, and I kind of all of a sudden got a call about July, or Connor had a serious injury, and Connor was incredibly determined to be ready for opening night, and knowing how hard he pushed that off season, pushed himself, and he was in the lineup on opening night, and then to play LA 2 years ago and to watch Leon have a high ankle sprain, and kind of watch him limp around on an everyday basis, and never missing a playoff game, and the impact that he and Connor had helping us, beat LA and then beat Calgary and then go play against Colorado, playing injured, determined. It's massive. They set the tone. For everybody else. And I was fortunate to have that in Detroit, and if you're a young player coming to training camp, or you make the team and you just watch how they handle themselves, how hard they practice out early, late, how they eat, how determined, how focused they are to pushing themselves to get better and better every day, has to drive everybody else. I mean, when you see what they're going through, it's a motivator. So certainly they're incredibly gifted athletes and incredibly determined, passionate, focused, committed. They're two of the greatest players in the National Hockey League, and possibly when their careers are over, going to be two of the best players to ever play the game.
So Ken, I'll leave you with this. Whatever happens this year, your legacy is intact. You've got a plaque in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Your name's etched on the Stanley Cup multiple times. This is the last year of your contract. I think you've been kind of vocal about it maybe being your last year as, a GM and executive running a team. Have you allowed yourself at all to dream about what it would be like to win this year?
First off, my focus is on the 23-24 team, and the future will take care of itself at the appropriate time. The last time that I was a part of a team being in the Stanley Cup Finals was 2009 when we lost to Pittsburgh. We went to the Final Four here 2 years ago, so I do know how hard it is to win the Cup, how good you've got to be, how things have got to kind of go your way at certain times. So, I know we're starting out all over again. And again, I guess the luxury of being a general manager for, I don't know how long I've been, 25, 26, 27 years, and been fortunate to have, been involved with lots of good teams and went to the finals, I think 6 times, and, we won 4 cups. It's a long way off. It's they hand the cup out in June. Someone's going to get the cup in June. That's the ultimate goal, not only for us, for multiple teams and maybe 32 teams. It's the process. It's each and every day. It's going through training camp and making those hard decisions about the final roster spot, and then trying to make sure that things are going good in Bakersfield, that the players are developing, and then you got to win game 1, and then the first 10 games, you want to win 6 or 7 out of the first 10. You got to get out of the gate. You start to win 3 or 4 out of 10, and you start to get behind, because probably 96 points makes the playoffs. You got to win 6 games out of every 10. So, every 10, I kind of watch what's our record, and the next 10, and somewhere along the line, you need an 8-2 if you want to compete for top 4 in the conference to be home ice. So, I understand the process. I'm not going to get ahead of myself and start thinking about 8 months down the road. That's why we're all in it. That's the players, the management. We love this challenge of trying to build something, and maybe you get a little excited as you start to get into May, and then you start to get down the road. But right now, I'm worried about making the playoffs. I'm worried about our team getting off to a good start. I'm not worried about where my career is going to go when this year's over. I think no matter where my life goes and my career goes, I've been the luckiest guy in the world I remember playing road hockey in Vernon, BC, and pretending I was, Terry Sawchuk and Johnny Bauer. I was a big Leaf fan, and when they
you
won
were
the
almost
cup,
a vacuum cell.
Yeah, and then I became a Leaf a draft pick, and then I became a big Bernie Perrant fan when the Flyers won, and then I played junior in Medicine Hat Tigers. So I pinched myself quite often to think, where I was, 11th round draft pick, and now I'm been inducted in the Hall of Fame, and my name's on the Stanley Cup. So would I like to get my name on the Stanley Cup one more time? Yeah, who wouldn't? Everybody does. But I understand, again, it's a long, long process. It's way, way out there, and you got to take care of business each and every day. And then you need a little bit of luck along the way. And and then we'll see where it goes. But I'm excited about the challenge. I'm excited about the 23-24 season. I think we have a really good team. I think there's lots of really good teams, and now we got to go out and prove over 82 games that we have a good hockey team.
A long way off, but can't wait to watch it unfold. Thanks so much, Ken.
Thanks, Frank.